Hello everybody, welcome to another in-depth deck building video. We are talking today about the Doom archetype in the Mystic class. The Doom archetype, I've been repeatedly told by newer players, it's very intimidating and they don't get it and they don't know where to start. And I'm here to tell you that I'll help you try to figure out and how to play and how to build for the Doom archetype. But I also gotta tell you that the Doom archetype is unfortunately missing a payoff that you're able to really make work. In the last episode, when I did the Big Money Rogue deck, I was talking about enablers and payoffs. There are a lot of enablers for placing Doom on your cards, but there's not really an actual payoff for Doom, which is a little bit unfortunate. They added one in Drowned City, in theory, Blood of Thoth, that allows us to actually do stuff. So here, let's actually start by, before we get into anything, let's look at Doom cards here, right? So we have some payoffs in the form of Abyssal Tome and Divermus Mysterious, right? So these are what we'd call the closest to the payoffs. There are also these assets, but it's not really a payoff when it's just helping you win the game at a rate that is equal to other people winning the game, right? Abyssal Tome, it allows us to fight. We may use either Book or Brain for this attack instead of Fist. And when you initiate this attack, you may place one Doom on Abyssal Tome to a maximum of 3. You get +1 skill value and deal +1 damage to the attack for each Doom on it. So this is a nice way for us to kill enemies. And be able to do that. So this is a nice payoff that on the damage side. Divermus Mysterious, exhaust it and place one Doom on it. Play a spell or insight event from your discard pile, reducing its resource cost by 1, and after the event resolves, remove from the game. Being able to loop events and do them multiple times is another nice payoff, but it's still not really a payoff that really makes you want to scream and shout and let it all out. So these are all of our Doom cards. So for my focus, here's Blood of Thoth, by the way. It gives you extra actions, but very, very, very slowly. I wish there was an upgraded version of this that was actually not as, dare I say, unplayable. But because of this, I think that the best Doom deck is actually one that is just playing the game and using Doom occasionally, which is unfortunate because I think the archetype itself is actually rather empty. So it's kind of just the downside of the Doom archetype, and also kind of just the general structure that we're going to get in with this video. We have 3 investigators that I think are potential for us to talk about in this video. It's going to sound like that I am that I don't know who I'm going to play of these 3, but I've already decided, and you already know from the thumbnail of the video which I'm going to play, but we're going to pretend I don't know. So let's talk about the pros and cons of these 3 investigators here. Marie Lambeau is our first one that we have here. She's a 4/4/1/3, and while you have 1 or more Doom on cards you control, you may take an additional action during your turn, which you can only use to play spell cards or activate spell action abilities. Elder Sign effect is +1. You may add 1 Doom or remove 1 Doom from a card you control. Marie's biggest upside is the fact that you can actually just see what she does. Her payoff for Doom is on her investigator card, right? She does 1 additional action each turn if she has Doom on her stuff to play spells or use spells. So that's a very easy way for you to have an idea of what you want to be doing with Marie Lambeau in order to win the game more, right? So it's a very nice thing that you're able to just see with this. She does have, I think, 2 pretty big downsides in terms of being able to take advantage of the Doom archetype. One of them is that she can only play Mystic cards 0 to 3. So your Doom potential doesn't really grow. Notably, I do think that the Doom charms, which we're going to talk about later on in this video, don't necessarily scale too much at the higher experience things, so it's not like she's missing too much. But she does end up kind of being more just a traditional spell mystic, which I think is good for the Doom archetype, because again, the Doom archetype is not really a fully fleshed out archetype because it's missing that top end. But it does mean that it's less exciting to talk about in this video, right? The other thing is that she has Baron Samedi as her weakness, and this is a very tough basic weakness to deal with. It's something that kind of just, like, I think eats up a lot of the discussion about the deck building for Marie. So just something that is also kind of, like, there for her. Next up, we got Amina Zidane, and unlike Marie, we're going to start with her weaknesses, which is her stat line, which is luckily the first thing we talk about most investigators. She has 3s across the board. She soaks for 5 and 9, so she is softer on the health side than the horror side. She has great horror. But 3s across the board doesn't really make the investigator pop and sing and do cartwheels and, like, jump up and do uppercuts, right? Like, it's a stat line that people more often now at this point to as a weakness rather than a positive, right? The concept of jack of all trades, master of none isn't really as super successful in Arkham. And there's a big reason why the one Wilson Richards, the 1 3-stat investigator, doesn't feel like 3s, because he actually has 4 in all of his stats when he's using tools, and Amina Zidane doesn't get that bonus. Amina has a reaction for her Doom synergy. When you play an asset, reduce its resource cost by 3. It enters play with 1 Doom on it, limit once per round. So Marie and Amina, they both have a Doom positive ability, but they each have, like, a different sort of payoff for Doom, right? Marie cares about there being Doom in play. Amina Zidane is using Doom to just play things cheaper, and then she's not really able to take advantage of that Doom when it's in play. So it's just like a little bit of a slight downside that comes with Amina Zidane here. She does play Mystic 05 and Charm 04. I think she actually has a pretty good card pool. It's just a matter of that she's going to require a bit more work than Marie to get things done. And to be honest, I don't even really know what her signatures do, and I'm not going to, like, think about them. Her weakness does put a Doom. You move a Doom on an asset you control to the current agenda. If no Dooms move this way, you shuffle back into your deck, and this can cause the current agenda to advance, so it can Ancient Evils you. And the flavor text is unintelligible squiggles. That's really funny. The last person we have that I think is worth noting for the Doom archetype is Dexter Drake. Unlike Marie and Amina, he doesn't have the Doom payoff on his tin, right? Like, they're kind of like the payoff to Doom. And he is kind of like the solution to Doom. So Amina and Marie are going to need to run solutions to the Doom archetype, because Doom is going to cause the agenda to advance. And Dexter Drake has the solution to Doom, but he doesn't have the payoff to the Doom. I think he's a very good user of both the Abyssal Tome and the Vermis Mysterious. But he doesn't have, like, that Doom thing on the tin. But I think he's, in my opinion, the best user of Doom, but he's the one we're not going to build around today. I was torn then between Marie and Amina, and I think that Marie is very nice for her ability to take advantage of it with spell cards. Like, I think it's a very applicable Doom thing, but I don't think she's going to be using the Doom in the same way that Amina would do, and I think Amina is ultimately more interesting to talk about in regards to the Doom archetype, because I think she does the design intention of Doom better than Marie Lambeau, so we are going to build an Amina Zidane deck. We'll do current taboo, and let's build it. All right, we're in. We're ready to rock. Let's turn this into scans mode. Let's drink some water. I just recorded the dragon video for Rogue, Big Money, so I talked a lot, and we're getting ready to talk a lot again. Okay, let's talk about Doom. And let's also talk about the upgraded Doom cards. Let's just talk about it all. Okay, so Amina Zidane, 3s in all of her stats. We're going to mitigate that by essentially just having, like, 5s in all of our stats, which sounds crazy, but it's how things are going to get done here. That's how we're going to work on stuff. I think that the intended gameplay loop that was designed in Scarlet Keys for Doom was the idea that Doom drips in and it drips out. It drips in and it drips out. So we're going to be looking at taking advantage of placing Doom and then like removing Doom. Like we're going to be constantly trying to do that through the form of these charms. Specifically, Dowsing Rod. This, I think, is actually a super playable charm. I think it's like easily the best of the bunch. And I think it's the one that you're going to see most likely when you do play it. As an action, investigate. Either use your brain or get +1 book for this investigation. When you initiate this ability, choose one as an action. This is part of it. Exhaust Dowsing Rod and place 1 Doom on it to move to a connecting location. Saving you an action, essentially giving you a Duke the Dog. Or if this investigation discovers the last clue at a location, remove 1 Doom from Dowsing Rod. So, with Dowsing Rod and this Amina deck, we want to be ensuring that we hit our that last location, Doom, like every turn. And I know that sounds like I might be dreaming a little bit, but in 2 players, which I'm going to be building this deck for because I primarily play in 2 players, Dowsing Rod is very good at saving you actions and then also emptying itself of Doom. We are going to run some fail-safes if we do run into a situation where we need to remove the Doom but can't because of just clues or failed tests, but we're not going to worry about too much just initially because it actually is surprisingly easy to keep this thing going. So don't be afraid to use Amina's ability to have this cost 1. Because last I checked, if I just quickly crunch the numbers, so 1, 2, 3, 4. So this is 4, and then this is 1. 1 is less than 4 by a magnitude of 3. So it's one of those things that it just becomes easier to buy other things for it. So like we're going to be using Amina's ability to save on money on our charms first. That's going to be the biggest priority because these things solve their own Doom problem. As we level our deck up and add more Doom cards to this, it's going to be one of those things where we're going to be able to spend our ability on other things. But currently, our focus, at least on the level 0 deck, is the charms that we include into our deck. How many charms we include is going to be remains to be seen, but that is kind of like the first focus that you want to do. This is what I mean about the drip in and drip out form of Doom that we're going to be doing. We're not looking at doing big bursts of Doom. We're looking at like putting a Doom on the Dowsing Rod to play it or use its ability, and then emptying it out as soon as possible. And that's like, I think, the format of Doom that is most successful, at least at this point with the thing. So we're going to run 2 copies of this Dowsing Rod. We are also going to, the upgraded version, it's not great, right? So the thing that has is exhaust and place 1 Doom. It's +2 book, but you can exhaust it and get +2 skill value. So it's either like +2 brain or +3 book, which is, I mean, actually like a pretty good number to hit. And if it's the last clue, you ready and remove all Doom. So you also get to ready it in compared to this other one. So you just remove the Doom, but this one allows you to, the upgraded version allows you to ready it. I am going to throw those on the side deck now because we are going to be wanting to put that in here. And now we have to talk about the elephant in the room that is the other 3 charms. I do think that Hallowed Chalice is actually surprisingly playable. I think it's actually like surprisingly alright at getting the job done. I don't know how viable this card would be at 2 players, as I said I'm building this deck for, but if you're playing 3 players, I think this is actually a really nice option for you to include. It's very good at removing Doom, and it's from itself, surprisingly, and I was actually pretty impressed with this card just as like a support flex kind of role. Onyx Pentacle. Evade. Either use your brain or get +1 foot for this evasion attempt. When you initiate this ability, choose 1. Exhaust it, place 1 Doom on it to target an enemy at your location or connecting location and get +1 skill value for this evasion attempt. Or if you succeed by 2 or more, remove 1 Doom from Onyx Pentacle. We're not going to be really fricking around with that. Succeeding by 2 is going to be really difficult for us. So it's going to be one of those things where we're really not looking at it. We then have the Ceremonial Sickle, which is not great. We might be playing it here in this deck. We're going to see how everything else goes, because this is going to kind of probably be like a Kluver leaning like killing small things style of play. We're going to worry about that like once we just see everything else come into play. But Fight, you either use your brain to get +1 fist for this attack. When you initiate this ability, exhaust Ceremonial Sickle and place 1 Doom on it next to get +1 skill value and deal +1 damage for this attack. If this attack defeats an enemy, remove 1 Doom from Ceremonial Sickle. I mean, like, it's the hard part about this one is that it's kind of like the same old traditional fighting clooving damage clue problem, right? Where dealing +1 damage, or sorry, like missing on an enemy attack hurts a lot more than missing on an investigate. Because worst case, you just, with an investigation, is you just have to investigate again next turn. Worst case with an enemy is you are getting attacked by that enemy. You then add Ceremonial Sickles, the fact that in order to get that +1 damage, you need to place a Doom on the Ceremonial Sickle. The worst case scenario, as you can see, is already starting to get a lot worse, right, because of that. The upgraded version as well, it just doesn't do enough to really make it worth it. I don't know what happened for these things to cost 4 experience, but I think unfortunately it led to much more unplayable binder fodder than it would have been otherwise. And this is where you can also kind of see the issue with Doom, and it also carries into the other thing that is quote-unquote the payoff of Doom. This is Sin Eater. This is going to be a card that we're going to be wanting to put into our decks and you're going to want to upgrade into. That's just the reality of the situation here, okay? We're going to be playing Sin Eater in the upgraded version of our deck. It is a 3 experience, permanent, exceptional. As a Lightning Bolt, exhaust Sin Eater, move 1 Doom from an asset you control to Sin Eater, then either ready that asset or place 1 charge on it. This is a nice effect. This is very powerful. This was a card that I thought was going to be so powerful that I said that this was a problem. I was gravely mistaken when I said that, but the card is still very good. As an action, you can also remove all Doom from Sin Eater. The problem with this card is that while yes, the readying the asset or placing 1 charge on it is something that we can do to take advantage of, the big problem is that it's not really a payoff, right? It's a mitigating card. Like, we're using this card to mitigate risk of the archetype, and that's kind of something that we're going to see for the Doom archetype a lot here, unfortunately, is that so much of this exists to mitigate the Doom, but apart from like 1 or 2 cards, the Doom that you place unfortunately isn't often worth it in the long term. So it kind of has this issue where the Doom archetype is very awkward because of that. But we are going to be putting this in the side deck, and we're going to want to upgrade that into it ASAP. Okay. Let's talk about Doom a little bit more, but we're going to specifically just stop at level 0 here, okay? So one thing I will say, one thing that is really nice about Sin Eater is that it... What am I trying to say here? The nice thing about Sin Eater is that we can use it to use Amina's ability on other things. So when I said earlier, when we have our level 0 deck, our Dowsing Rod is going to be like the main thing we want to put the Doom on, or the Hallowed Chalice, which is going to make the cut for reasons that I have come to terms with, but I don't know if you guys have come to terms with yet, how this is going to go. You might, if you know me, you might. But the thing that about Sin Eater here is that it's going to allow us to do on anything, and then especially if we're able to place charges on it, we can take advantage of that. And that is going to be a long-term game plan that we are going to be doing with this deck. So, as I mentioned, we're going to run 2 of the Hallowed Chalice here. I think the Dowsing Rod and the Hallowed Chalice are going to be the main makeup of our deck here for like our hand slots for this kind of thing. And while there's no upgraded to the Hallowed Chalice, we are going to have the... Oh, sorry, this should not be in the side deck. This should be in the main deck. It's going to be really nice for as we get things going. I talked about Blood of Thoth earlier. I just don't think it's good enough. We have another card we're going to be putting into our accessory slot that I'm going to deem more important, and I'll get to that once we get to that. Alyssa Graham is fine, honestly. I think she's actually a really nice... if you're playing with Sin Eater, I think she's really good. The only issue is that we're going to be upgrading into a very nice ally for our deck, and Alyssa Graham won't last long, and I think she's a bit too expensive for level 0. We have Arcane Initiate. After she enters play, we get to place a Doom on it and exhaust, search for spell cards. We're going to see how many spell cards we get. I think she's obviously very good with Marie Lambeau. There's a very easy like 1-2 punch where you play Arcane Initiate and then you get to like find a spell and then you get to use that action to play the spell, which I think is like a very nice thing to have happen. And then there's David Renfield, who is going to be some good economy. But I think in the long-term version of this deck, we are actually going to be using our ability every turn, right? So that's kind of like the long-term goal of this deck, is that we're using Amina's ability every turn with Sin Eater. That's kind of like the long-form goal of this deck. So David Renfield is a little bit less spicy because of that. However, with that said, I do think that David Renfield is going to be our ally of choice for our level 0 deck, because if you think about what I just said, right, where the long-term goal of our deck is we want to be able to play an asset every turn with Amina's ability to get a resource cost reduction of 3, which is very powerful. We're going to need resources before we can get to that point. And David Renfield is going to be good until we're able to use Sin Eater every turn, which I will recommend as your first upgrade in this deck. I think Sin Eater will do the most juice for this. We have Blood Pact. It adds Doom, gets Brain or Fist. We're not going to really interact with this here, so we're not going to run this. We are going to play 2 copies of Cat Mask, though. This does a really good job of helping us use our brain for things, and then also our fist for things. I mean, like, the nice thing about Cat Mask is that Amina Zidane can't really get tricked by, she can't really get cornered by, like, Swarm of Rats, right? She's going to be up 2 base, but if you have a Cat Mask, you can be up 4. The nice thing about Cat Mask is you replenish 2 of these offerings after Doom is placed on a card with no Doom, which turns out, as I stated, is going to be our goal every turn. So you can have like a sequence where you're going to like Dowsing Rod Brain +2, Drowsing Rod Brain +2, and then play something as your last action. And like, then you're like golden because you can refill your Cat Mask with Amina Zidane's ability. So very nice there. Last few cards that we got here. We got Moonlight Ritual, remove all Doom from a card you control. We're going to run 2 copies of this. And there's a fast version in the upgrade. We're going to run that in our sideboard. I think it's a very important thing for us to include. Okay. String of Curses is some fine enemy management. I don't know if we're going to run it in here, though, because this is not really like Doom Archetype. This is more like Doom as a cost on the enemy, but it's not really the Doom Archetype we're going to be doing here. And Whispers of Doom, it says Doom for its title, but also if we fail, we place Doom on the enemy, so it's not really here. And then we got Prophesy. While there are 3 or more Doom in play, Prophesy gains Wild, and while there are 6 or more, it gains Wild. So this card would be really good for the Doom archetype. Unfortunately, the designers released a card that was even better than this card in the form of Promise of Power, which is probably going to make the cut. It's probably going to be in here. I'm just being real with you. So this is still going to be a flex Amina deck, is my thought process here. But we're just going to flex in a very interesting way. It's like, it's a 2-player flex Amina deck. I'm going to be honest with everybody. I actually want to play this deck that I'm starting to cook up here. And that's very interesting because that's never really happened for me in this in-depth deck building. Like, I've enjoyed talking about the decks and being analytical about all my decisions, but I haven't really like played I haven't played Amina in a campaign environment without some sort of weird gimmick, and I kind of want to. I'm getting a little bit hyped. All right, let's move on to let's just talk about a few of these experience cards. El Rubash is what we're going to be building towards in our ally slot. So El Rubash is you get +1 skill value while resolving a skill test on an attached asset, and then 1 Doom on each attached asset does not count towards the agenda's Doom threshold. And as a lightning bolt, we can exhaust El Rubash, choose an asset in your play area with 1 or more Doom on it, attach it to El Rubash, or switch it with an attached asset. So the nice thing about El Rubash is she gives us that +1 skill value. She was designed to be played with Amina. She came in the same set, so they're like best friends. But additionally, it also gives us more time for us to not need to rush as much for our Sin Eater. So like, for example, like it doesn't even be a hand asset. So like when we play some of these other assets that we're going to play, we can lock one of them onto L, and then when we have the time to empty it, we can then switch it with another thing that we play that we're able to do this. Oh my god, I'm just suddenly getting like so freaking hyped for this, man. I don't know. I'm just starting to be like, I need to play this deck. I need to. All right, but we're going to add 2 L's to the sideboard, and she's going to eventually replace our David. I already talked about Sin Eater. This is going to be a very important thing for us to put into our deck. It is our loop. It's our loop, and like it's going to be where we're going to get the value to get those emergency caches each turn. We have Ghastly Possession. After you commit to a skill test on an asset, you choose 1, place 1 Doom on that asset. Ghastly Possession gains Wild Wild. If it's successful, either remove 1 Doom from that asset or replenish half of its uses rounded down. We're not going to be playing this card. I think it's a good card, but it's not really what we're doing here. I mean, it might make the cut. It might make the cut in the long term, but not in this actual video. And you might be thinking, but Justin, is that it? Are those all of the Doom cards? Pretty much. Pretty much. So I don't think we're going to play the Tome or the Divermus Mysterious. Mostly because we're going to use Amina Zidane's ability to our advantage here to do things really well. Alright, chat. Now it's time to get a little bit hurt, okay? We're going to hurt ourselves here. We're going to take a copy of In the Thick of It. And we would take 2 mental trauma, putting us down to 7. And then, chat, I'm taking 2 copies of Arcane Research, putting our trauma down to 4 mental trauma. So we're going to go become 5/5s, okay? So we're doing that. That's happening. So get used to it, okay? I'm also taking a copy of Down the Rabbit Hole. Potentially. I'm not sure on this one. We're going to sit on that one for a bit. We're going to see how this goes. So, the reason we're taking this Arcane Research is we're going to be upgrading a lot of spells. I don't know if I'm taking the Great Work. I don't know if we're taking the Great Work. I don't know if I'm doing that one. Because I think it really hurt. I mean, it doesn't actually hurt the stats so much, but I'd rather keep my ability the whole time, right? Because we're building around the ability, so we don't really want to, like, lose that ability. Okay. So, means that we're going to be upgrading our spells better. And we're going to be using our spells, to essentially become Akachi, right? That's going to be like the long-term plan of this deck. We're going to be playing spells, and then with Doom to make them cheaper, and then we're going to use Sin Eater to ready those spells, sorry, not to ready those spells, remove that Doom, and then place a charge on it. So we're going to just go like spell crazy here. We're going to take 2 level 1 Brand of Cthuggas for 2 of our experience. The nice thing I really like about Brand of Cthugga is that we may use Brain instead of Fist. So it depends on, like, we can use either the Cat Mask on one of... Oh, this is in the side deck. I need this in the main deck. Sorry. We're going to take the 2 Brand of Cthuggas because, once again, we have the Brain instead of Fist. And we may use it, so it's one of those things where we can, like, choose whichever is better at the time. And the thing that's more important for me for Brand of Cthugga is that we do not spend these charges unless we hit, which means that Amina Zidane is downside of that Brain is less of a thing. I think our last experience is going to go into Divination. Just a 1-of on here as well. And then I think I'm also... So Divination, let me read this. So the reason, again, is the same sort of thing where we may use Brain instead of Book. So it kind of falls into a similar place of Dowsing Rod. But additionally, we also don't get clues unless we actually succeed, which I think is super important. I'm also going to run 2 copies of Shriveling at level 0. So this is when I said that our damage is going to come in the form of our spell slot. And our clue getting is going to come in the form of our Dowsing Rods and our events as well to kind of get things done. Shriveling, if you don't know, it's just a spell that deals a bunch of damage. We can take Horror, but as Holy Helicopter in chat says, that is ultimately why I did decide to do 2 copies of the Hallowed Chalice, because we are going to be looking at healing our Horror. I'm also going to play 2 copies of Fearless in our skill slot, So if it's successful, we get a heal 1 horror. Something to consider here. And it's not 2020 Arkham, 2025 Arkham, unless you're playing Enraptured and then upgraded Enraptured in your side deck. So if it's successful during an investigation, like with our dowsing rod, we get to place a charge or a secret on an asset we control, so we can use more of our shriveling. Oh my god. Alright, so with all this, as this deck is going, sorry, yeah, you're in my side deck, and then also for Fearless. I don't know, chat, it's looking like we might want, down the rabbit hole, right? Dowsing Rod, Brand, Divination, Shriveling, Moonlight Ritual, and Enraptured, Fearless. The downside is we have to pay extra for Sin Eater, and we have to pay extra for... I mean, the Sin Eater one is pretty bad, right? But let me just ask, chat, is there a way to get extra experience in the Mystic class? If only there was a way, right? No, I'm not taking Great Work. I do think that the risk is not worth the reward in the long term. So the Great Work's not gonna... I actually don't think the Great Work... I don't think the Great Work is good. I actually think it's bad. So I'm not even gonna... I think Down the Rabbit Hole is, like, broken. And, like, Great Work is just fine. And fine for an effect that does that is not good enough for me. Alright, Delve Too Deep. And player or each investigator draws 1 card from the top of the encounter deck. And then add Delve Too Deep to the victory display. Victory 1. This is going to be a really nice thing to help us get more experience, to also pay that action, that extra task, if we do go with Down the Rabbit Hole, which it's looking more and more likely that we might. But 2 of these I think are really nice for us to just get some extra experience as it goes. Okay, we do have our accessory slot still. We're going to go with the St. Hubert's Key. So the thing I really like about St. Hubert's Key is it increases our brain and our book, which works for both our spells, but also the dowsing rod, so we can get that extra 1. So as a reaction, when you would be defeated by horror, discard St. Hubert's Key immediately to deal 2 horror. It does give us -2 sanity, which puts us down to... If we play this on turn 1, you have 3 sanity left. Luckily, it does mean that you're able to, like, not like die when it happens. You actually get a bunch of healing. But this thing costing 1 is also really good. Okay, so if I'm looking at this deck, there's a few things that we're currently missing, right? And a big thing is card draw. The unfortunate thing about the Mystic class is there actually isn't a lot of really great card draw. There is Scroll of Prophecies. I actually want to be looking at specifically level 0 here. She also can play Lucky Cigarette Case, but I don't think that's going to be the way. Okay. I'm going to take 2 of Scroll Prophecies. 3 cost, so it's free with her ability. Uses 4 secrets as an action. Spend 1 secret. Choose an investigator location. That investigator draws 3 cards, then discards 1 card from their hand. You're going to want to be using this primarily on yourself unless you are all set up. But this is some really nice card draw to kind of just like get yourself through the initial hump while you're looking for everything. If I was playing this deck, I mean, honestly, we can do a few mulligans as well. I should have done that with the big money deck too, so we could talk about it. Okay, we have 7 more cards. And how are we worried about economy in this first little bit? Let's look at our curve, chat. It's not terrible. It's going to be expensive on the first go. 4 cards that cost 1. 5 cards that cost 2. 3 cards that cost 0. Okay. Okay, I'm also going to quickly also just look at this Heals Horror, see if there's anything else that's really worth it. No, we got all the stuff we want. Yeah, because just with the form of Shriveling, which we do want the level 3 version in the side deck. And we do want the upgraded versions of these in the side deck. Okay. I'm going to take... now we just want some generic protections. So we're going to take Deny Existence. We're going to take Promise of Power. We could do Ward of Protections. That extra horror is... So, like, the thing is, like, yeah, that 4 horror at the start, but we actually have a lot of ways to heal. Hallowed Chalice, the Fearlesses are going to work, especially if we get the upgraded version, which we'll probably want. So, let me talk about these cards that I just added. I'm getting a bit too excited because I'm like, I want to try this deck out. But Deny Existence, fast play when an encounter card or enemy attack would cause you to do one of the following: discard cards from your hand, lose resources, lose actions, take damage, or take horror. You ignore that aspect of this effect. We're going to be using that, like, depending on what's scarier, right? Like, if we draw Rotting Remains and we can fail it, which, because we only have 3 brain, 4 brain if we have the David Renfield Boasted or the Key of Ys in play, which is not in our deck right now. Sorry, not the St. Hubert's. It's because it's in the side deck. Put those in the deck. So, Deny Existence does a really good job for that. Was there another level 0 card I put in here? Let me just check. No, all those are experienced. Okay. Yeah, so, like, the Deny Existence does a good job of helping us out there. And then the Promise of Power kind of does a similar thing. We use this to protect ourselves in the Mythos phase. We have a lot of ways to protect ourselves, and then, like, the Hallowed Chalice. And then I think I'll run one of, for our last card, a one of Ward of Protection, just to kind of keep us safe. And then we can put, like, this in the side deck, the upgraded version of that. And the upgraded, the level 5 Deny Existence can also go on the side deck. So we went with Ward of Protection. This is a core set card. You probably know what it does. 1 cost, fast play when you draw a non-weakness treachery card. Cancel that card's revelation effect, then take 1 horror. I really like it as an option. But again, you have to be, and that's why it's only a 1 of for this, because we have to, like, heal through our horror. I will say, though, I've done In the Thick of It into Arcane Research a few times, and it turns out the power boost is, like, totally worth it. You just gotta, like, make it through a little bit. We have ways to get clues in the first scenario. This is like a flexier deck, so I'd assume my teammate can also flex, kind of leaning a bit more towards... I mean, this is actually pretty heavy both ways. It's pretty 50-50. So now it's the question, chat. Is this worth a down the rabbit hole? Let's talk through it, okay? So, you usually earn about, on average, 6 experience in the first scenario, right? If we assume that we delved too deep, we would get 7 experience, potentially even 8 experience. That allows us to buy the Sin Eater, right? Because the Sin Eater is going to cost us 7 experience. The question is, how much do you actually... I'm not going to put it in the deck, but I'm going to leave it up to you. I think if I was playing this deck, I would do Down the Rabbit Hole. Because let's just say, for example, I bought Sin Eater, right? I bought Sin Eater for 7 experience. We got 7 on the first one. We'll just say we got 6, or we got 6, and then we hit a Delve Too Deep, right? Let's just say that happened. It is a Magic Christmas Land, but, like, we're just talking about this. Let's also even just say, like, let's just say I hit 5 on the first scenario, and I couldn't afford the upgraded, I couldn't get Sin Eater. But what I could do is I could buy a Shriveling for free. I could buy 2 Shrivelings for free. Okay, that is really good. That's really good. I would consider in this deck, I'm not going to put it in here, I would consider Down the Rabbit Hole in this deck. If I was doing this, I would play Down the Rabbit Hole, but I'm not going to put it in here. But, like, we have so many things we upgrade, it would be pretty hype as hell. But I think it depends entirely on your comfort level and how you feel like as a team, you will get the experience. I think if I was playing this as a 3-player deck, I would do Down the Rabbit Hole for sure, 100%, no question. If I was doing this 2-player, it would depend a lot on my confidence in the other teammate's deck, because again, the first scenario is very important for that experience that it gives you. Okay, let's just check out this deck. So yeah, it's a Doom deck. It actually is. It's just like a different version of Doom deck than I think a lot of people expect for Doom. But I think the big reason for that is that Doom doesn't really have a lot of ways of paying off the Doom. It's like a weird song and dance. So I think that using Amina's ability, I think we actually cooked up something here that I think is a very interesting deck to play. And I actually really want to try this in a campaign. I think it could be really fun. Upgrades on there. And then, as I said, let's do a hand. Let's draw 5. So in this hand, this is actually a really nice opening hand. I would get rid of the cat mask. I would get rid of this. I would get rid of that. So then I would redraw those cards. Like, we're a little bit slower on the way to get clues, but it is, I think, a nice place to start. Oh, I guess I can bring myself back. And if we do another, let's do another reset. This is great too. I think I would keep St. Hubert's Key as Scroll Prophecies and the Brandigathuga, and then I would redraw those. And that's a hand I'm happy with. We don't have a way to remove the Doom from either of these, so I'd probably play Scroll of Prophecies into Brandigathuga, and then I would draw 1, 2, 3. And then, okay, I think it's there. There's the pieces for it. But, all right. Thanks for watching, everybody. Hope you enjoyed this episode. Hope you learned a little bit about Doom. Kind of just the approach. You can either go like Burst Doom, use Doom as a resource, like in terms of Amina, use Doom to like enable future payoffs, or you can do this like drip drop Doom that I think is like the intended form of Doom in the current state of Arkham. But in the meantime, thank you so much for watching, everybody. I hope you enjoyed it. Have a good one. And as always, a GG's.